Here we are,
There we are.
Friday,
Yay.
and a good one.
Yeah, and it's sunny over here. Okay, but we have a fun one.
We're outdoors. I'm kind of jealous.
All right, so today's question is, how do I get the most out of my coach?
So I think this is a very fortunate question for somebody to get to ask themselves, because it means you have a coach, which is great. I think coaches have become, in the business world, a lot more popular. There are now services. We're investors in one called Sounding Board that allow a much broader set of people to have a coach. I've worked with a coach for 8 years, 9 years now. And at first, I'll say I had some stigma around it. I was like, oh gosh, what's wrong with me? I don't need a coach. And then somebody pointed out the sports analogy, which is like great athletes have coaches at elite levels. And I was like, okay. And also another CEO that I knew had one. What I didn't know is that there are many kinds of coaches, and we can have a whole separate conversation about that another time. But in my first meeting, I was totally unsure what to do. I was like, well, clearly you must have a plan for me. What's your program? And yeah, there was a little bit of that. Like, let me ask you some questions to assess. But mostly that's not how I've seen coaching work. It's not like you go into a set sequence of things. It can be. But in case you're not, the first thing I just say is ask the coach about how you might use them best. And, Min, you were saying something about the role of the coach in helping you be accountable. Is that something that you said in your conversation with your coach?
Totally, yeah. I think like the difference between having a therapist, in my mind, the difference between having a therapist and a coach is that your coach is there to help you be held accountable to like your goals and action plans. And that's been, for me at least, in my experience, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be a difference. They are sometimes pretty similar. I would say therapists tend to have, obviously, in general, a lot more professional training than coaches. So the second thing I'd say after asking someone how best to use them is don't expect them to know exactly how you're going to work together. They may be figuring it out. Some have a style where you can take a cue. But oftentimes, I think there are now, like, what are the elements of the coaching relationship? In the coaching sessions that I've been in, there's kind of two things broadly. One is bringing up dilemmas or opportunities that are alive for you in that moment. Somebody made me really angry when they did this. I can't figure out how to get my team to do this other thing. I've got a big strategic choice. So bringing up the issues that are alive for you. And the other is having some overarching like growth edge or arc that you're working on where there's some narrative to it. And that's where the 6-month goals can come in. And so if you have both of those things, you can get your immediate needs met. You can keep working towards some long-term quests. But the biggest value, honestly, to me, is just somebody whose only role is there to support you. And a lot of it is just sharing with them, what you're going through, and you figure it out sort of with their reflection on your own.
Yeah. And I think one of the things about coaching is that the medium to long-term cumulative effect can be really powerful, and that some of this comes down to like consistency of practice, and that like whatever is the cadence that you find natural with your coach or whoever you find support with, like that pays off like in the longer term. And so even if you don't see results like after one session, I think it's worth keeping like commitment to it.
Maybe on other days we can talk about like, how do you know actually if a coaching relationship you should transition, or picking a coach? I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about around coaching, but the idea that everybody should feel empowered to have somebody in their corner, mopping their brow feels to me like a really powerful idea. So let's send everybody off into the weekend with that.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.